An 11-year-old boy was supposed to be in a coma, but he could hear everything. What his parents said made him wish he hadn't survived. Adam floated in the abyss of his own mind, trapped between a past and an uncertain future. He wasn't sure how long he had been like this, adrift, disconnected, yet painfully aware. The world outside his body had not abandoned him completely. He could hear the rhythmic beeping of machines, the occasional shuffle of footsteps, the distant murmur of voices. But his own voice, his own body, nothing. At first, he thought he was dreaming. He had to be. Because if he were awake, really awake, he would be able to move. He would be able to open his eyes. Wouldn't he? But the more he listened, the more he realized that this wasn't a nightmare he could wake up from. This was real. The first voices he recognized were the nurses. They spoke softly, their words a mixture of medical jargon and gentle reassurances, though not for him. They were talking to his parents. He wanted to call out to them, to tell them he was there, that he could hear them, but no matter how hard he tried, his body refused to obey. No significant brain activity, one of the doctors said. A chill ran through Adam's consciousness. No significant brain activity? That wasn't true. He was here. He was thinking, listening, feeling. He wanted to scream that they were wrong, but the silence inside him was absolute. Then his parents' voices cut through the sterile hum of the ICU. His mother's first. He could picture her standing beside his bed, wringing her hands, her voice trembling. "But there's still a chance, isn't there?" she asked. "People wake up from comas all the time." A pause. His father's voice came next, colder, more measured. "Some do, but most don't. And if they do, they're never the same." Adam's heart pounded. Why did his father sound so distant, so detached? He waited for the words he needed to hear, the words that would anchor him back to them. "We love you. We're not giving up on you. We'll wait as long as it takes." But they never came. Instead, his father sighed heavily. "We need to be realistic. Keeping him like this isn't fair. Not to him. Not to us." His mother didn't respond. Adam wanted to cry, to shake her, to beg her to say something. Anything that meant she wasn't considering what it sounded like she was considering. But she remained silent. And in that silence, Adam felt his world begin to break. Time lost meaning. Adam couldn't tell if hours had passed or days. He existed in an endless cycle of fear, frustration, and helplessness. The room around him remained unchanged. The steady hum of machines, the occasional footsteps of nurses, the murmurs of doctors discussing his condition. But none of it mattered. The only voices he cared about were his parents. And the more he listened, the more his heart shattered. His mother had stopped crying. That was the first thing he noticed. At the beginning, she had sobbed quietly at his bedside, whispering words of comfort, promising that he would wake up, that she was there. But now there was only silence. Then, one day, if time even worked the same way for him anymore, his father spoke again. "I spoke to Dr. Reynolds," he said, his voice measured, emotionless. "They're saying if there's no improvement soon, we should consider other options." Adam's stomach twisted. Other options? He didn't need to hear the rest to know what that meant. His mother hesitated. I don't know if I can make that decision." A pause. "You think this is easy for me?" his father snapped. "Do you think I want this?" Adam flinched internally. He had never heard his father sound so sharp, so raw. "If we had just been more careful," his father muttered, almost to himself. If he hadn't, he stopped abruptly. Adam's mind reeled. If he hadn't what? For the first time, he felt something different from fear. Confusion. A deep, gnawing need to understand what had happened to him. Then his mother spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It wasn't our fault. He should have known better." Adam's thoughts froze. What were they talking about? What was his fault? And then, like a wave crashing over him, memories began to stir. Faint, blurry at first, but growing sharper, clearer. A cold night. Rain on his skin. Headlights. The screech of tires. Pain. The realization hit him with the force of a sledgehammer. The accident. He had been in a car accident. And now, listening to his parents, he wasn't sure what was worse, the fact that he was trapped in his motionless body or the terrible suspicion creeping into his mind. His parents weren't just mourning him. They were blaming him. The memories crept in like shadows, slow and hazy at first, then sharp and unforgiving. Adam didn't want to remember. But now that the pieces were falling into place, he had no choice. It had been raining. He remembered that clearly now. The world outside had been drenched in silver sheets, the wind howling against the windows. And he had been outside in it, running. His parents' voices pulled him back to the present. He never listened, his father muttered. Always so impulsive. His mother exhaled shakily. He was just a kid, Mark. Adam felt the sting of her words. Was as if he were already gone. His father wasn't moved. A kid who shouldn't have been out that night. He never should have left the house. Adam's heart pounded. Left the house? Yes, that was right. He had snuck out. But why? Then it came back to him, clear as the day it happened. Liam, his best friend, had called him that night, his voice trembling. Adam, I need you. Please. Liam had been afraid. Adam hadn't asked why. He had just known his friend needed him. And without thinking, without waiting, he had thrown on his jacket and climbed out the window into the storm. He had run through the streets, his shoes splashing through puddles. The wind had been cold, the rain soaking through his clothes. But he hadn't cared. He had to get to Liam. And then, the lights, blinding, rushing toward him too fast. The impact, pain, darkness. Adam's mind reeled. He hadn't been reckless. He hadn't been playing. He had been trying to help his best friend. But his parents didn't know that. And now, as he lay in the sterile stillness of the hospital room, he realized something that made his chest ache in a way no injury could. They didn't care why he had been out there. All they saw was a mistake. Burden. A problem they wished they didn't have to deal with. And for the first time, Adam wasn't just scared of dying. He was scared of what would happen if he lived. Adam had never been more certain of anything in his life. He had to get out of this. Emma's visit had ignited something inside him. For the first time, he felt like someone actually saw him, like someone believed he was still there. And if she believed, maybe there was a chance. But time was running out. His parents returned that evening, and their conversation made his blood run cold. I spoke with Dr. Reynolds, his father said, his voice low but firm. They want to meet with us tomorrow. We need to make a decision. His mother hesitated. I don't know, Mark. What if we're wrong? What if? His father cut her off. Look at him, Claire. He's gone. No. Adam wanted to scream. I'm here. I'm right here. Panic surged through him. He couldn't let them do this. He needed to show them, someone, that he was still alive inside this broken body. He focused all his energy on his fingers, just like before. Move. Move. Nothing. He tried to blink. To twitch a toe. To shift his head. Nothing. Desperation clawed at him. He could feel his heart racing, his body screaming to respond, but it wouldn't. It was like being buried alive, trapped beneath an invisible weight that refused to let him break free. His parents kept talking, their voices distant now, as if he were sinking further away. It's what's best, his father was saying. Best for who? Adam wanted to shout. For me? Or for you? The realization hit him like a tidal wave. They weren't doing this because they thought it was right for him. They were doing it because it was easier for them. And if he didn't stop them soon, there wouldn't be a second chance. The door opened. Footsteps. Emma. Hope flared in his chest. If anyone would believe him, it was her. She was the only one who had spoken to him, the only one who had treated him like he was still there. But she couldn't help him if she didn't know. With every ounce of strength he had left, Adam tried again. His fingers, his eyes, anything. Then, a spark, a tiny twitch. Emma gasped. Wait, did you just? Adam tried again. Harder this time. Another flicker of movement. Her breath hitched. Oh my God. Emma's heart pounded as she stared at Adam's hand. She had seen it. She knew she had seen it. A flicker. A twitch. Something real. She hesitated, afraid to move, afraid that maybe she had imagined it. But then there it was again. His fingers trembled, just barely, but it was enough. She wasn't crazy. He was in there. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Adam, can you hear me? Inside his mind, Adam screamed. Yes, yes, I can hear you. But all he could do was focus every ounce of his will into moving again. Another twitch. Emma clapped a hand over her mouth, her eyes wide. Oh my God. She spun toward the hallway. Dr. Reynolds. Someone, please, I need help in here. Footsteps. Voices. The rush of people entering the room. Adam's parents. His father's voice was laced with irritation. What's going on? Emma turned to them, her face pale, but determined. He moved. Silence. His mother's voice trembled. What do you mean? I mean he's not gone. Emma's voice sharpened. He moved. Twice. He's still in there. A pause. Then his father scoffed. That's impossible. The doctors said. I don't care what they said, Emma snapped. Look at him. She turned back to Adam, her voice softer now. Adam, if you can hear me, try again. Adam pushed with everything he had. His body was weak, his energy slipping, but he forced his fingers to move again. Just a little. It was enough. Emma let out a breath of relief. You see that, she said, turning to the doctor. Tell me that's nothing. Dr. Reynolds hesitated, stepping closer. He lifted Adam's hand, gently pressing against his fingers. Adam, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. Adam tried. God, he tried. His body resisted, but he didn't stop. And then slowly his fingers curled, just barely, around the doctor's. Gasps filled the room. His mother let out a choked sob. Oh my God. Emma smiled through the tears welling in her eyes. I knew it. But Adam didn't have time to celebrate. His father had gone pale, his expression unreadable. But Adam saw it. That flicker of something in his eyes. Not joy. Not relief. Fear. His father didn't want him to wake up. And now Adam knew the truth. The room should have erupted in relief. In celebration. Adam had just proven he was still there. He had moved, responded. It was everything they had been waiting for, wasn't it? His mother gasped, her hands flying to her mouth, her shoulders shaking as silent sobs racked her body. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God, Adam. Emma exhaled sharply, blinking back tears. I knew it, she said, half in disbelief, half in triumph. I knew you were still in there. Dr. Reynolds, who had been skeptical just moments before, was already shifting into action. This changes everything, he murmured, stepping closer. We'll need to run tests. If he's responsive, there's a chance his condition isn't as... But Adam wasn't listening to him. He wasn't listening to his mother's frantic whispers, or to Emma's relieved murmurs. He was staring at his father. And his father was staring at him like he had seen a ghost. Adam felt a chill crawl up his spine, deeper than the cold of the hospital room, heavier than the weight of his unmoving body. He had expected shock. He had expected relief, maybe even guilt. But what he saw in his father's eyes was fear. Not just surprise. Not just worry. Fear. A suffocating silence stretched between them. His father's hands curled into tight fists at his sides, his expression blank, too blank. Then, as if waking from a daze, his father cleared his throat. This doesn't change anything, he muttered. Emma's head snapped toward him. Are you serious? Dr. Reynolds frowned. Mark, we need to reevaluate everything. If Adam is responding, it means there's a chance for recovery. His mother nodded quickly, wiping her tears. Yes. He moved. He squeezed her hand. That means something, right? She looked around desperately, as if searching for confirmation. The doctor gave a cautious nod. It's a promising sign. But his father wasn't convinced. He shook his head, his jaw tight. A sign doesn't mean a miracle. We don't know what this means yet. His voice was cold, steady. What if this is it? What if he never fully comes back? What if he glanced at Adam, then quickly looked away. Not the same. Adam felt something sharp twist inside him. Emma's eyes narrowed. Not the same, she repeated slowly, like she was testing the words on her tongue, trying to see where they led. His mother hesitated. Mark, please, he's still our son. No, his father's voice was sharp, final. We need to think logically about this. Logically. Adam felt a surge of anger. His father had always been a practical man, someone who made decisions based on facts, on reason. But this wasn't logic. This was something else. This was avoidance. Emma crossed her arms, stepping closer to the bed. "Are you listening to yourself?" she said, voice taut with disbelief. "He's fighting to come back, and you're acting like what?" His father's voice cut through the air like a knife. Emma didn't flinch. "Like you don't want him to wake up." Silence. A thick, oppressive silence that made Adam feel like the room had suddenly grown colder. His mother inhaled sharply. "Emma," she whispered, as if the words were dangerous to even say. Adam's pulse pounded in his ears. Because Emma was right. His father didn't want him to wake up. And suddenly, the memories he had been grasping for, the ones just beyond his reach, felt more important than ever. The accident. The headlights. The impact. Had his father really only been afraid of losing him? Or had he been afraid of something else? Emma wasn't backing down. "You're not telling us something," she said, her voice measured but firm. His father's face darkened. "That's ridiculous." But Adam felt it. Something was wrong. Something huge. His father wasn't just being cautious. He wasn't just afraid of false hope. He was afraid of what Adam might remember. Emma's hands curled into fists. "He moved. That means he has a chance. And I will not let you decide otherwise." His mother's voice wavered. "Mark, maybe we should." No, his father's voice was low. "Dangerous. We are not going to drag this out longer than necessary." Drag this out. Like Adam was some unfinished business. Something inside Adam screamed. His father knew something. And now Adam knew the truth. If he wanted to survive, he had to remember. Adam had spent days, weeks, trapped in silence, screaming inside his own mind with no one to hear him. But now, as he watched his father's face twist into something dark and unreadable, he realized something terrifying. Being unheard had been awful. But being feared, that was worse. His father didn't want him to wake up. And Adam had to know why. Memories tugged at the edges of his mind. They were still fragmented, like shards of broken glass, but they were there. The accident, the storm, the headlights rushing toward him, the impact. The moment before everything went dark. There was something missing, something important. Emma wasn't backing down. "We are reevaluating this," she said sharply. "He's conscious." He responded. "That means we do everything we can to bring him back." Dr. Reynolds nodded. "We'll schedule another round of tests immediately. If his cognitive function is intact, we—" His father stepped forward suddenly, his voice cold and even. "That won't be necessary." The room fell silent. Emma's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" His father turned to Dr. Reynolds. "We need to be practical here. A few muscle twitches don't mean he's coming back." The medical team already said. The medical team didn't know he could hear us, Emma interrupted, her voice shaking with anger. "And yet, here we are." His mother spoke up, her voice barely a whisper. "Mark, maybe we should just wait a little longer." A muscle twitched in his father's jaw. "Claire, we've already had this discussion." "No, you've had this discussion," Emma snapped. "You decided that Adam wasn't worth saving before we even knew if he was still in there." Adam's mother flinched, looking away. His father's voice remained eerily calm. "We have to make the hard choices." "You think I want this?" Emma's hands curled into fists. "Then why do you look like you're afraid of him waking up?" The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. His father didn't respond. And that was all the answer Adam needed. The memory crashed into him like a tidal wave. The night of the accident. The rain. The headlights. The car. His father's car. His father had been there. Adam's mind spun. No, that wasn't right. He had been alone. Hadn't he? But now the truth was unraveling before him. The headlights hadn't been random. They had belonged to his father. The fight. The yelling. "You don't get to just walk away from this, Adam." His father's voice, sharp and furious, echoing in the rain. Adam had been running. Running from him. And then, the impact. The pain. Darkness. It hadn't been an accident. His father had hit him. Adam's entire being went numb. He hadn't been careless. He hadn't been reckless. He had been running for his life. His father must have seen it on his face, Though Adam couldn't move, couldn't speak, something must have changed in his eyes. Because his father took a step back, his face pale. Emma was still watching him closely. Too closely. "What aren't you telling us?" she demanded. His father didn't answer. Adam's mother looked between them, her hands trembling. "Mark." He exhaled slowly, then straightened, regaining his composure. His voice was quiet when he spoke. "This conversation is over." He turned to leave, but Emma wasn't done. "You're scared, aren't you?" she said. "Not because you think he won't wake up, but because you're afraid of what happens if he does." His father stiffened but didn't turn around. Adam's mother's voice broke. "Mark, what did you do?" Silence. Then, finally, his father spoke. His voice was empty, hollow. "Nothing that can be undone." He walked out. Adam's heart pounded as the door shut behind him. His mind was racing, screaming, trying to put together what this meant. What it really meant. Emma turned back to him, her voice softer now. "Adam," she whispered, "whatever happened that night, we're going to figure it out. And you are not alone." For the first time since the accident, Adam felt something deep inside him shift. The truth was coming. And this time, no one could silence him. The days that followed felt like a blur. Doctors surrounded him, running tests, checking his vitals, measuring his progress. The news of his response spread quickly, shifting the hospital's entire approach to his case. What was once a quiet, sterile waiting game had turned into a rush for recovery. His father didn't visit again. Adam wasn't surprised. His mother came, though. She sat beside him, holding his hand, her grip tighter than before, like she was trying to make up for something. Like she knew. She hadn't asked him any questions yet. Maybe she wasn't ready to hear the answers. Emma was there every day. She talked to him even when he couldn't respond. She told him about her own life, about the world outside, about things she wanted him to see when he got better. And he was getting better. Slowly, painfully, but undeniably, his body was waking up. First, the small things, a twitch of his fingers, a weak attempt to move his foot. Then, his eyelids. The first time he managed to lift them, even for a second, Emma had nearly burst into tears. Every movement was a battle. Every inch regained felt like climbing a mountain. But Adam had something now that he hadn't had before. A reason to fight, because the truth was still out there. The pieces were there, sharp and jagged, waiting to be put together. His father had done something. And whatever it was, Adam was going to remember. The nightmares had started. Flashes of the accident. His father's voice, distorted and angry. The headlights. The impact. The pain. He wasn't sure if his mother knew the truth yet, if she had figured it out, or if she was still clinging to denial. But soon, there would be no more denial. Because Adam wasn't going to stay silent. Not anymore. One evening, Emma sat beside him, reading out loud from a book she had brought. The words blurred together in his tired mind, but her voice was steady, warm, safe. He wanted to thank her. He wanted to say something. His throat ached, dry and unused. His lips barely obeyed him. But he tried. Emma didn't notice at first. Then, a sound, faint, rough, barely there, but a sound. Her book slipped from her hands. "Adam," she whispered. He swallowed, his entire body trembling with the effort. Then, with a voice that was cracked and weak but his, he spoke his first words since the accident. Emma's face paled, because they both knew. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss any of our upcoming content. And while you're at it, hit the notification bell so you'll always be the first to know when a new video drops. Your support helps us grow and bring you even more amazing stories. So go ahead, subscribe now and join the journey.